The Phoenix Suns might not be playing basketball this week because the majority of the league isn't. There's this weird chasm now that exists in the beginning of December, and it's right before the December 15th date when the majority of the league becomes available for trade. So what happens? Rumors. Trade rumors. And yes, Matthew, the Phoenix Suns are involved in some trade rumors. Something I don't know if any of us really expected considering the state of the Suns and their roster construction.
Well, with Matt Ishbia, anything can happen here in Phoenix. So you might rule it out because of the no trade clause, how much money we're over on the second apron, but it doesn't matter. Whatever he wants to do to make this team an actual championship contender, he's going to pull out the wallet. He's going to make some trades. So this team is going to be fun every year at the trade deadline.
Phoenix is a destination, and when Matt Ishbia takes a look at the second apron, or even the first apron, or any apron, he just says this to it.
It doesn't matter!
And it doesn't, because we are rumored to be one of the destination teams of Jimmy Butler. Butler-Mania is taking over Phoenix. So we're going to talk about this from all angles. Is it plausible? What would it take to make it happen? Would you want it? Who would have to go? How does it affect the team if it happens? If it doesn't happen, all of that's coming up live on the Suns Jam Session podcast. So thank you for joining us, whether it's live or later on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch. If you're listening, supporting the show by doing so, that's all we can ask for. Make sure you subscribe, rate, review wherever you're consuming this. And if you want to, go to brightsideofthesun.com, read my writing there, read Matthew's writing there. He's got an MVP piece coming out tomorrow on Kevin Durant. Make sure you guys do that. I don't have anything to crack open. I just have a delicious Christmas cookie. You know what's funny? My wife made a bunch of cookies, and then I decided yesterday, I'm going to start Weight Watchers again.
It's not a good time right now.
Not a good time. Not a good time. No, it's only a good time to drop the drop. Jimmy Butler in a report from Shams Charania today. Well, let's back up. Jimmy Butler stated yesterday through the media, of course, that he would be interested in going to three teams. That Jimmy Butler, who is somebody, who has that dog in him, if you will, who has the X factor that I feel like this Phoenix Suns team desperately needs, is somebody who put himself kind of out there on the market. And there's been some denial from his agent that that's the case. But at the end of the day, the brass tacks of the situation is Jimmy Butler, $48.7 million this year, player option next year, has put out into the universe, hey, I want to be traded. I want to go to Golden State. I want to go to Houston. I want to go to Dallas. And it brings me my first question.
Matthew, I've got to ask.
So, Matthew, I got to ask. As I'm still chomping on cookies over here, I'm such a fat ass.
I'm jealous.
Jimmy Butler originally states that he wants to go to those three teams. And then today, Shams tweets out, the Phoenix Suns are another team that Jimmy Butler's agent, Bernie Lee, has indicated in league circles that the six-time All-Star is open to as a destination. While Miami listens to trade offers, sources tell ESPN joining Dallas, Houston, and Golden State. So my first question, very basic. Would you want Jimmy Butler on the Phoenix Suns?
Yeah, and I think it comes at the hands of Bradley Beal. I mean, he would probably be the one gone if you can do a three-team trade. But absolutely, I think Jimmy Butler is the one guy that he's the most championship. Like he won the most championships that hasn't won any championships. He just seems like a dude that's won about 5 or 6 of them, walking around the NBA, just going from team to team to win championships. But he's been close. He's been that guy on a lot of teams, but they just never have had enough on the teams he's on to actually win a championship. So he's come very close, of course, with Miami. I think about 3 years ago, he kind of really established himself as one of the most winning guys out there, the guy that has the attitude, the balls to do a lot on the court to help your team win. And that's exactly what the Suns are looking for too. I think it's a guy that will bring a championship to the Suns if he can get into that starting lineup and they can stay healthy, replacing Beal. But it's just about getting there. And now that we kind of have a taste of like, hey, we can have maybe Jimmy Butler if we can pull off a trade, it's kind of hard to go back to what the Suns were with Bradley Beal. So I think that right now the Suns are in a good situation, obviously year to year, to kind of make things happen just because nothing really matters. Because going into the season, we're like, there's no way to get out of this big three. But here we are. We have a chance. There might be a way out of it. It might not happen, but it's a possibility.
It's definitely a possibility. You know, like in one of the pieces that I wrote for Bright Side of the Sun about this exact situation, I said it's improbable, but it's not impossible. And what entices Suns fans, as I'm sure if you're listening or watching, you're right along, lock in step with me on this. When it comes to Jimmy Butler, is he fills the exact need that we have on this team. Obviously, Bradley Beal is the contract that we are all referencing should be the one that should be parted ways with. You're not giving up Devin Booker. You're not giving up Kevin Durant to get Jimmy Butler. It's the Bradley Beal contract that I know has a no trade clause, and it's definitely something we'll address here momentarily. But it's Bradley Beal who even, like I was having this conversation with Suns Geek a couple days ago when he was on the podcast. The moment that Bradley Beal came to Phoenix, we were all like, oh, sweet, no more Shamet. But why did we get Devin Booker of the Eastern Conference? He hasn't fit. He hasn't fit next to Devin Booker. It takes away nothing from who he is as a person, who he is as a man, who he's been as a member of this team, as one of the few who's displayed emotions on the court and asked and pleaded with the team to be better. He's, I feel like, been the one Sun who's been accountable during this frustrating season plus 23 games since he arrived. But all that being said, it's a duplication of Devin Booker on the court. And if you can part ways with that, and obviously all of the contractual frustrations and hurdles that his contract brings, you also could garner back somebody like Jimmy Butler, who has size at 6'7", who fits right into that 3 spot. And above all, as you mentioned, Matthew, has that championship quality, has that dog in him. The guy who was in Minnesota with a young Karl-Anthony Towns is like, get me the fuck out of here. These guys don't give a shit. He goes to Philly. He's like, Embiid don't give a shit. Get me out of here. Ended up in Miami in a culture, you know, that Heat culture that is inducive of winning and rewarding you for your effort and caring about the game in which they play. And him next to Booker and Durant would be something. It fills out the roster nicely. It's addition by subtraction. And although he might share one thing in common with you, and that is he was born in 1989, it's the fact that he's not going to be more injury prone than Bradley Beal, is he?
No, and I think that's the one thing. And when you're looking at this as a whole and you're looking at Bradley Beal's side, it's kind of like, you know, all the trade talks happened throughout the season. Last season, it was just a mess with Kevin Durant leaking that this roster wasn't good enough with the roster last year. This year, we kind of started with Nurkic wanting to get rid of him. Now it's Beal who's always hurt, and he's succumbed to like the actual trade talks on Twitter with everybody kind of wanting him gone and trying to get out of the contract. So that was always the biggest issue for the Suns in getting out of his contract. I think that if he were to actually replace Bradley Beal, it just makes more sense in the fact that he is a size. He is actually a 3. Booker go back to playing the 2, which he is more comfortable at. I know you're talking about, I don't know if you released an article yet about Booker and how his shooting woes. It might get better or not, but the way that the Suns are actually shooting the 3s now, it's kind of maybe hurt him.
Mm-hmm.
It might change up the whole system too, because obviously, even though Butler and Bradley Beal have the same shooting percentage from 3, he's not really a 3-point shooter, but he is also like a bigger Chris Paul. He can kind of slow the game down, handle games in the end. He can be the next guy next to Kevin Durant to make the big shot. And just kind of control the game. So that's what you're really looking for as a leader in that way, because what's really missing, like you said, is that dog, like the Jay Crowder that we used to have when he was good the last season with the Suns, his last good season in the NBA. We just always kind of had those guys in the finals run where they can step up and they can be tough. They can be the shit talkers and they can get your team through tough times. And this is the guy that can do that. I think Beal is trying his best out there. He's trying his best to do it whatever he can, but the injuries still are coming.
Mm-hmm.
The shot making is still not there. Him and Booker cannot win a game without Kevin Durant. So we just seen the difficulties this team has had. But when they are healthy, like Gerald Brigade did say at PHNX, that this team, sources are saying that they really do buy into the big three still. They don't want to make any trades. It's tough to go back now after the Jimmy Butler trade and be like, all right, well, we have to deal with our big three. They were phenomenal together through a tough stretch early in the season, but we just know that this is like the actual piece. If we're going to get rid of Beal, this is the time to do it. So I don't know. I think that this is a huge move for the Suns that they can make it happen.
Yeah, and I completely agree, and I don't think that there's anybody in Suns fandom who disagrees. I honestly don't. I've listened to a bunch of different Suns fans on Twitter, and seen the discourse over the past couple days, because again, when Jimmy Butler leaked, if you will, that he wanted to go to specific teams, I put together a 3-team trade and said, hey, this could be a way to get Jimmy to Phoenix, just kind of throwing it out there. And then obviously this happens today. I'm like, hey, maybe Matt Ishby, because I tagged Matt Ishby in the trade. We'll go over it momentarily. So I don't think there's any doubt that adding Jimmy Butler to this Phoenix Suns team in this window that we have would be beneficial. It would be a plus versus having Bradley Beal rostered. Okay, that's understood. Now there's some more of the semantics. There's the semantics behind, as you mentioned, what Gerald Bourguet of PHNX said, that the Phoenix Suns have no interest in breaking up their big three. And you have the agent who Shams Charania quoted, I believe his name was Albert Lee or something Lee. The agent came out and said, I don't want my name in this, none of this is true. And I see some of the comments in the chat. And again, thank you everyone who's watching along live. Jason, seems like Shams cooking up some BS for clicks and coverage, while also saying, why would his agent care about killing the rumor if it wasn't true? And there's semantics behind this, because starting on the Heat side and Heat Check, I don't know if you're a Heat fan, but you're in here. It's because he's pissed about it being leaked. He says his agent's mad because Shams leaked the conversations behind closed doors. There's professional relationships that agent has with that team, right? So there's a couple different things going on. One, maybe he said it in confidence, but I think if you say anything to Shams Charania, you probably understood it's not in confidence. That guy's going to leak it as much as you can. But also, he has to defend his position that this isn't true, because he has to continue to do business with the Heat. And if the Heat are like, well, why are you going to Shams Charania and talking to them about trading Jimmy without having conversations with us? That's bad faith. We're not going to move off of it. So you have that side of it. And then you have Gerald Bourguet saying what the Suns are supposed to say in this situation. We have no interest whatsoever in trading the big three. We heard that before pre-Kevin Durant coming in.
Yeah.
Where they were committed, to that team that made the finals run. And the moment they had an opportunity, granted under a new owner, they dropped that dime right away. So they're always going to tell you one thing behind closed doors and show another, because that's, from a professionalism standpoint, that's how you have to conduct yourself, right?
Yeah, and Shams Charania might wake up with a Jay Leno bruise on his eye, just all of a sudden, what, you fell down a hill? All right, buddy, you trying to go to Applebee's? Okay, yeah, I'm sure.
Nobody goes to Applebee's at 3 p.m, Shams.
Yeah, but it's a tough situation for Matt Ishby and the Suns too, because bringing Bradley Beal here after he's played for the Wizards his whole career, uplifting his whole family to come here and all of that, was a big change for him and his family. So I think just the buy-in in the beginning of having Beal here, that this is a championship contender, and getting him here, because Beal wasn't too sure that he wanted to come here, so they had to really have him buy in. And now it's just like, well, you know what, it's not working. We don't want anything leaked. We don't want anybody to believe right now that we don't believe in this big three, because we got Beal here. Yes. If we want this team to work. So that's probably why it's being linked, just in case it doesn't work. I don't think if they were to come out to say like, yeah, we're shopping Beal, and it doesn't work out, then that looks bad and that destroys the whole rest of the season, because Beal's not gonna give a fuck. He does. Mm-hmm. He definitely has the attitude and personality to be like, fuck this team, then I don't care. Like, I'll just go out there and just make goofy faces. Yeah. Like I could just see that the whole time. And the Suns don't want that. The Suns want to make sure that this thing is done right if it does happen. And if it doesn't, that there's nothing leaked out there, that they were interested in actually getting rid of him. So I don't blame the Suns for leaking that. But the thing is, it's like, this just makes sense, because anytime there's a player leaked for a trade, Phoenix is a destination, like you said.
100%.
And we are obviously in the championship hunt every season. So the one thing is get rid of this contract, and Jimmy Butler makes the most sense. So obviously we can go with our gut like we did before with Kevin Durant and Brooklyn Nets.
And
Where it's
Chris
like he wants
Paul.
to come here, and even Kevin Durant said it was a year in the working to get to Phoenix. It took him a year almost. So, these things once they're leaked, it's usually pretty true.
A couple comments. We have Accounting Sacred. He says there's no big three
No,
in
there's
Phoenix. There's not, but contractually there is, and that's the challenge with this team right now.
That's
is you're
what we mean
paying
by
one
big
guy $50 million, and he just doesn't fit. It's not to say Bradley Beal isn't talented. He just doesn't fit and isn't providing the price or value paid, and that right there can be somewhat frustrating. Brian Herrera brings up this point. He goes, I remember a year ago that Miami was not interested in Beal, according to Gambo. And in this specific situation, that doesn't matter. So now we get a little bit into the semantics of how this could actually work. And because it wouldn't be a 1-for-1 trade. The Suns could not trade Bradley Beal if he wanted. Again, he has a no trade contract or clause in his contract. There's 2 players in the NBA who have that. Bradley Beal, LeBron James. That's it. So he is in the driver's seat. He dictates everything. And that's what makes this, as I mentioned before, improbable, but not impossible, but highly improbable, because you're going to have to sell 2 different entities on this trade occurring. You're going to have to sell Bradley Beal on something, on, hey, if you get out of Phoenix, you can go and play more of a secondary role if that's what you want. Because right now he's in that tertiary role. And when your contract is up in a couple of years, you're going to have one more opportunity at 33 years old to get one more bag, one more contract. Because right now as a tertiary role, when you hit the market, you're going to be like a $20 million a year player versus potentially a 30, 40, $50 million player when your contract's up. So you have to sell him on that. And then you have to sell the team that he's going to, that he is worth what you're giving him. And the only way you're going to do that is you're going to have a team that's going to want to get off a bad contract and somehow bring in another contract, which is not good. And that's why what makes this tough. And so it's funny because 2 days ago I wrote an article about trading Beal before any of these rumors came up, and who I defined in a 1v1 trade because this team is not a second apron team was the Chicago Bulls. Because again, we can't trade Butler for Beal straight up due to apron restrictions. The Miami Heat are a first apron team. The Suns are a second apron team. What does that mean? It just means that they can't, unless the money equals exactly the same amount, you can't trade them for each other. But you bring in Chicago, who is a non-apron team, and you can make some things work. And they have a contract that they've been shopping desperately to sell for 2 seasons now, and it's that of Zach LaVine. Zach LaVine is on a contract that, when they signed him, they thought he was going to be the next big thing, and he had won a couple slam dunk contests, and sometimes teams are irresponsible in the way that they pay their superstars, because they go, you know what, we're going to pay this guy all this money, like Beal got paid, and it's going to be an asset to trade later. And right now, he has a contract where he has 3 more years left on it. 43 this year, 45.6 the next year, 46 next year, 49 the next year, with a player option in that last year. So it mirrors Bradley Beal's almost exactly, except it doesn't have a no trade clause. And that's where you have to kind of sell the Bulls on, hey, if you need a change and you want somebody who's kind of like what you already have, but is a Midwestern guy who comes from St. Louis, right? He can reignite with his old college basketball coach and Billy Donovan. Here's Bradley Beal. And the trade that I put out yesterday that now has gained some worth, if you will, is the Bradley Beal goes to the Bulls, Zach LaVine goes to the Heat, because the Heat have to get something for Jimmy Butler because he's a player option next year. And so what he's essentially telling them is like, trade me now or I'm not opting in. I'll just become a free agent. So get something for me now or nothing at all. And then Jimmy Butler comes to the Suns. So with all that being said, thoughts on the ability of the Suns to talk Bradley Beal out of his no trade clause?
Well, like I was saying earlier, where you have kind of the fans speaking out and saying, like, you know what, a trade might have to happen for us to kind of move on and get better this season. And also just, kind of not forgive everything that's happened, but it's just kind of like you kind of want to move past it and just kind of like, all right, we gave it a shot. It did not work. It's kind of been ugly. It's been a mess. We don't want to go through the rest of the year past the trade deadline and more injuries happen, and the fan base just completely turns on us, right? So
Yep.
I think the best thing between the fans and Bradley Beal is just to kind of move on from each other. And if Bradley Beal can just, think about, all right, moving somewhere else, if he were to actually go to the Chicago Bulls, it's a place that, it's in the East. There's not as much expectations with that team as there is in Phoenix right now, right? Phoenix is like, you have to win this year or else you're going to be freaking thrown out the window for like a lot of, like, the TVs are going to be thrown out the window really when they're watching this team in the playoffs again, because that's what happened last year is going to happen again this year. And I think if Bradley Beal can really just think like, if I can go to Chicago, I can actually play alongside Kobe White and Josh Giddey, guys that can handle the ball and just be a shooter like Zach LaVine was. It'll make more sense for me. It won't be as much pressure on me, just knowing that Chicago still is not there. They're going to be a team that's kind of just mid. They're not good enough to be a team that's a top tier team, but not bad enough to be like a actual lottery team. So for Bradley Beal to actually think about that, I think that makes more sense. And also for the Phoenix Suns to kind of get Jimmy Butler back makes more sense. And obviously with the Heat too, man, Zach LaVine, it's a good fit for that team too, right? They're kind of in the same situation as Chicago. You're out East. There's not a whole lot of expectations. They're on a 3-game winning streak, 7 out of 3, 7 wins out of the last 10. So they're kind of streaking right now, but they also have a guy in Jimmy Butler that wants to kind of just get out and start fresh. So for all teams, it looks really good, and it makes more sense obviously for the Suns, but the other teams too. It's like, yeah, it kind of makes sense to get rid of these players that kind of want to be out of here. So you might as well just get it done now.
Yeah, and again, it comes down to the biggest challenge being Bradley Beal and that no trade clause, because you have to talk him into, kind of as you mentioned, like, it's championship or bust this year, Brad. And
yeah,
there's a lot of expectations riding on this team, and if we don't win it this year, this fan base is going to turn ugly, and they're going to turn on you. And perhaps. Even though the Suns are saying, big three, we're committed to it, they're the ones who Shams Charania twice on Inside the NBA said, keep an eye on the Phoenix Suns. Like, he's talking to people within the Phoenix Suns organization. And Bradley Beal, obviously, his name is being brought up left and right now. It's an off week. His name's being brought up left and right. And maybe he's seen that, unfortunately, if there's no success here, or already what the fan base thinks of him, and that he is a trade chip, and if it is championship bust and we don't win a championship, and everyone's going to kind of hold him accountable, does he want to be around that? And again, that's something that they really have to keep an eye on and monitor as days progress. And he's going to be monitoring as days progress. Is us not winning going to equate to more pressure on me that I don't want? Whereas I can go to, and again, like, he has to weigh that. Like, he wants a championship, I'm sure. And going to Chicago might not be a championship for him, but it's going to allow him an opportunity to have a longer career and prosper. Now, granted, we're talking about all this through the eyes of the Suns fan who get Jimmy Butler because he's going to solve a lot of problems while simultaneously getting us off the Beal contract. And that's what Mark R says in the chat. He goes, underrated part of trading for Jimmy is if things don't work out, you got out of a bad contract.
Yeah, exactly. It's the rest of the year. So it's basically renting him out. And honestly, if Jimmy does want to get paid and stay with the same team, Phoenix would be the place, because Matt Ishbia is going to pay you.
Exactly. He's going to take good care of you. Sky 300, Butler for Booker.
I like this.
One, it couldn't happen, again, because you need a third team.
Yeah.
That needs to be traded because they're both apron teams. And 2, no. What do you think?
I say no, of course, but what's interesting is we are talking about Bradley Beal and putting a lot of blame on him. If not, but we only are because of the injuries and just it hasn't worked out. But Booker, man, he's almost there to where he's getting a lot of scrutiny, and he's almost to the point to where it's kind of make or break every year for him. And his interview today at Shoot Around, he's talking about just how things have been without Kevin Durant. He was talking about like waking up and like he lives a good life, and he's going to come and still compete and stuff like that. So he said this before in the last year at Media Day. He said this where he's like, I live a great life. Like, I got to keep up the work here so I can do what I got to do in the off season, stuff like that. Like, that kind of stuff. I don't like to hear that. I'm just going to say that because I always feel like I never say things when I hear that shit, because it's just like I'm buying too much into it or reading too much into it. But like, that kind of stuff does kind of bother me. Obviously, you can enjoy your life. You have a great life, but you're playing to win. And it just always seems like he's just kind of like, like, I don't know, like, I'm going to go play, and if we don't win, we don't win. Like, I kind of just miss the old Booker, man, where he was just cutthroat. So I'm kind of nervous if we do get a Jimmy Butler in here, is he going to want to play with a Booker and Kevin Durant, who want to win, but it's just not the same feeling as we had when we were heading to the finals with that Chris Paul team, because those guys were nasty, and I
But I
just don't see
think
that anymore. Do you know what I mean?
100%. And that's been kind of one of the observation that a lot of us Suns fans have had with Devin Booker this year is it's almost like he left edgy Booker in Paris or something. But we all know that he left it when CP3 left the
Yeah.
team, because CP3 was the driver of the edge that Devin Booker had, the fuck you that Devin Booker had. And when Kevin Durant came, a lackadaisicalness as it pertains to the media and saying, hey, man, we're just here to ball. Like, let's go ball. And we know ball and we're going to enjoy ball. But that's it. There's a change in attitude. There's a change in competitiveness. There's a change in accountability that Devin Booker used to have. And I feel like the injection of Jimmy Butler, that's why I want him more than anything. Well, obviously, getting off the Beal contract is like the end all be all for me. It's like if the Suns can somehow get off the Jimmy Butler or the Bradley Beal contract, like I never want to hear anyone say James Jones is a shit GM again. Like if you could pull off that fucking those gymnastics, he should be nominated for the GM Olympics, because he gets a 10 in my fucking book. Get off of that. But a byproduct of this is you inject a Jimmy Butler who has that same drive and that same edge that Chris Paul had. If Devin Booker's shown us anything, is he's gullible to those around him, or he's a chameleon and he morphs himself to those who he plays with, whether it be CP3, whether it be Ricky Rubio, when he's just like never too high, never too low.
Yeah, he was drinking tea.
Yeah, he's like drinking tea. He's like, come on, Suns fans. Or like Kevin Durant, who he mirrors kind of his approach to the game.
Yeah.
And if you inject Jimmy Butler, who definitely carries alpha vibes with him, and don't get me wrong, like Kevin Durant would love that. Kevin Durant just wants to hoop. He wants to go out there and be the sniper that he is, right? And that's what we spoke about at the back end of last year. It's like when Bradley Beal started to show some of that fire finally, where finally someone on this team is like stepping up and having some accountability, and Butler's not going to be afraid to tell anybody anything. That's what makes him so appealing.
Yeah, but it also makes it a little scary too. I don't know, man. Like, how do you think the Suns players feel about swapping it out? Obviously, they're not going to say anything, but like, if you're to go inside Booker's head when he hears about Jimmy Butler and he's actually just shooting around, but he hears about it, in between just looking at his phone, what do you think he thinks about when he heads back to go finish shoot around with Beal and Durant and stuff? Does he think like, all right, well, that makes more sense? You know what I mean? Like at work when someone's gonna be let go, you're like, all right, it makes more sense. The other guy starting next Monday makes sense.
I would hope it would, because again, there's a duplication that's going on right now. And anytime Bradley Beal or Devin Booker's on the court, one of them is playing out of position. And that's a slap in the face to the legacy that is Devin Booker. I had a whole piece on this on Bright Side of the Sun before the season began. It's unfortunate that as Devin Booker has entered his prime last season and this season, he is being forced to play out of position or have somebody who's out of position next to him on the court. It doesn't maximize his effectiveness as a player. You did the right thing. You brought in Tyus Jones. You got a point guard. You got Monte Morris to back him up. You have solid point guard play now. But either Devin Booker or Bradley Beal must play small forward at all times when they're on the court together. And it's just not the way you play basketball. It's not, you can try. It's just like positionless, point guardless basketball last year. Like, yeah, let's give it a try and see how it goes. Bradley Beal and Devin Booker on the court together this year, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And if I, take time and look up the player lineups, I guarantee you it doesn't work. Talk a couple seconds and I'll find those lineups and I'll tell you exactly.
The lineups, I mean, I feel like they were pretty bad. Anytime you looked at the top 5 offensive rating, defensive rating, Beal was like maybe in one of them. Booker obviously was at the bottom too. So it was really tough. But I wanted to actually go back to the legacy thing too, because I think it's kind of a weird situation where we have these players where years ago, like they wanted that. They wanted everything. They wanted to win that championship and they wanted to be the best player. And I feel like, I don't know if it's our fault as fans. I don't know if it's the Twitter's fault, but I feel like no matter what these players do, they get shit on, right? I think LeBron gets shit on all the time, right? How great he is. So do you think they see it as, and I think maybe this is what Kevin Durant maybe showed Booker. I'm just guessing. Please don't come at me. Maybe he just showed Booker like, hey, look what I did in my career. All right. And I won titles. I did all of that. And I still am just hated by almost everybody. I'm loved on the streets, whoever I'm with, but there's so much hate. And he's like, do you really want to go through with that and put all your effort and just kind of fail everybody, even if you achieve what you want? But then also it's like, put all your energy into your actual life. Like, just enjoy your life and take the
Yeah.
money and go. Like, I can just see that being a thing now, just because I feel like it's a lot of maybe our fault, not ours, but like everybody, all the podcasts, all the media. There's no more real media. It's just like, this is the media. Twitter's media. Basically, anybody can be someone that has 100,000 followers, and it's
Yeah.
just like, I don't know. I see it that way, to where it's not like you're giving up, but Booker's just like, what's the point, right? Like Michael Tyson said, Michael Tyson, Mike, like
I've
Mike
never heard him
Tyson
call
said in an
Michael
interview,
Tyson.
Michael Tyson, get to your room right now, sir. He said in an interview where he's just like, what is legacy? Like, you're dead, you're gone. There's no legacy.
Oh yeah. Yeah, like some
to that
kid
kid
asked
that
him the
was 13
question.
years old. Yeah. And I'm like, you know what? There's something there. I'm like, maybe these players are kind of seeing that now after they've been there, done that. They're like, fuck it. I'm just going to make my money, get a good stats, and I'll make another great contract. And I have a great off season, man. I don't know.
You're not wrong in any of that. The only thing that's strange to me is like Devin Booker grew up idolizing Kobe.
Yeah.
3 words, Kobe would never. And you're right about the media. I mean, you and I are credentialed. The media can't be that fucking real if you and I are credentialed, So like, you're not wrong. And there's so much accessibility to it. And there's so much accessibility to players, to fans. So, in this new age, there's so much direct contact to where it can easily get you down, and it can be frustrating. And one of the coping mechanisms to dealing with all of that, one is put the phone down, or 2 is just become complacent. And at the end of the day, look at what really matters. And like, I'm here to do my job. I'm paid $50 million a year to do my job. I'm going to go do my job to the best of my ability. I don't feel like Devin Booker's is from a approach standpoint, mailing it in. I just think that there's a lack of care at the end of what the result is, because he has all that money. And to your point, he's like, yeah, they can sit there and all those armchair GMs over at the Suns Jam Session podcast can say and whatever they want. John Voight can write whatever he wants over at Bright Side of the Sun. When the day's done, I'm going up to Flagstaff during the offseason. I'm going to enjoy my life. So there is a factor that, and I completely agree with that. And it's somewhat made it, less enjoyable, because we have to factor that in. I don't know if anything that we just said is true, but the fact that we're thinking it and you have to bring that factor into play is valid, because it does exist with some players. You look like Jordan Poole. You look at Deshaun Watson, that piece of shit. Like, that guy just made all the money he can, was an asshole along the way, and is going to continue to bank checks and not listen to what anybody says because he's got all the money. So yeah, all of that's valid, and I agree. But bringing it back to Devin Booker and with this situation, my hope is, and to answer your original question, my hope is he does objectively look at it and go, man, because the only way that Bradley Beal honestly is going to waive his no trade clause, if KD and Booker could pull him aside and be like, listen, man, like, we need to have a conversation. Like, I don't know if it's going to work, man. Jimmy gives us a chance. You want us to be successful, yada, yada. Those are real interesting conversations that I don't know will occur.
No. And plus, like, if he wants out, he has to look at it as like, he didn't give up. The team needed to move on from him. And honestly, he's going to be in a place, like I said earlier, that he just can actually rest easy, and there's not a whole lot of pressure. It's like, if a 2-game losing streak happens here, we want to murder this team. Like, does he really want that? Like, if I were him, I'd be like, I'm just done. Like, it's not working, and I don't want to go through this the rest of the season.
Go to Chicago, where there's no expectations.
Well,
they don't care.
Yet.
Yeah,
They
really isn't,
care. They care, but like, you know what I mean? In out east, it's like
100%.
They know they're not a team to win a championship. Like, we have to win now because of Matt Ishbia and what he's done to the franchise and our finals.
We're in our window right now, and we need to maximize it. And that's why James Jones needs to hop on those phones, try to make it happen. All right, I'll ask you this final question before we get out of here. Do you think a trade happens? Do you think that somehow, some way, Jimmy Butler ends up playing in Phoenix this season?
No.
I'm with you. Unfortunately, I want it so bad.
I do too, but I just know we're gonna be riding this thing out the rest of the season. We probably trade somebody else. I feel like we'll trade Nurk before we trade Bradley Beal.
I think Butler. So I'll start with this. The reason we don't get Jimmy Butler is because other teams simply just have more to offer. Think back to Miami being in the sweepstakes for Damian Lillard. right? Now there was some friction and
Yeah.
some things that occurred around that entire situation, but ultimately the Heat didn't pull the trigger because other teams, the Milwaukee Bucks, had better assets to provide Portland. It's the same situation here. Golden State has a better package they could throw towards Miami and work in another team if needed. Dallas is in the same boat. And Bill Simmons has been saying it since the start of the season. He thinks that Jimmy Butler will end the season as a Rocket, and that's one of the teams that could use him, and one of the teams that is on his short list of 4 teams that he wants to go to. So he's what we can offer via a 3-team trade. And like, if we send Beal, if we can somehow get through this hurdle of Beal's NTC, we'd have to also throw our 2031 pick towards Chicago, which is a valued pick, maybe a couple seconds. Like, we're going to have to pay to get him out of here to get Butler in. Now, I still think that that's a good move because it gives you roster flexibility, right? If Butler's a player option next year, if he opts out, whatever, you got a ton of money there that you can save. If you want to start to move on from KD and start the rebuild, you have the assets to start the rebuild. So there's a lot more options than we have to tear it all down, but Bradley Beal's still standing outside the house because he's got the NTC, right? So there's that aspect of it to where I don't think it'll happen because other teams can offer Miami much better things than we can. And the other thing that, when it comes down to it is I do think that, as you mentioned, other trades are going to become available. I was on Trevor Booth's space. D-Rock Trainer is in the chat right now. He was on the space as well. And when I was driving home from work, I hopped in the space and, was listening to the conversation. And they were talking about, and I agree with that, Grayson Allen is our best trade chip that we have right now. Every team in the NBA needs shooting. See Orlando, last in the league in shooting. And there's something that you can gain from one of those teams. There's something you can, they have a need that we can provide and we can get something back for. And we're not have to go through all these back channels and hoops. So there's a lot of different things at play here. I would really like Jimmy Butler to be, I like Jimmy Butler to happen and trade Grayson and get something better. But we will see.
Yeah, we will.
So
I don't know. I don't know. Obviously you'd be happy with Jimmy Butler. I'm still nervous about this team. Either way, like, I feel like if we get him, I'd be like, oh, I can't wait. But then I'm like, damn, I don't know. Because when you get a guy at trade deadline, it doesn't mean anything. It's like you need to blend them together.
Yeah,
or
they
have
need
them
the
like work
chemistry
together.
to develop.
Yeah. So that's like, okay, well then are we in another 2-year window with Jimmy Butler and then have to pay him and bring Tyus back? I don't know. There's just
obviously there's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of self-reflection due to this odd NBA Cup schedule this week. There's been a ton of articles that I've been writing on Bright Side of the Sun, looking at a bunch of different aspects. I have one coming out, I think it's tomorrow, where it talks about the challenge with this team offensively, how we don't touch the paint. We are the last team in the league at touching the paint, 16.7 touches per game. How hustle stats, we're like 28th in the league in deflections, and we're bottom third in both a 2-point contest and 3-point contest. So what that tells me is a team, and this validates what we see night in and night out. It's a team that doesn't hustle on the defensive end. We're a team that turns the ball over. So there's a lot of challenges that we have with this team, and as we're doing the self-reflection, I think there's two things that I've really come to a conclusion on with this year's Phoenix Suns. One, when Kevin Durant's on this team, we are fucking amazing. We are a great team. We are a competitive team. And with all that being said, we're still not the best team in the Western Conference. And we have a long way to go if we want to get there, because from an attitude standpoint, we don't have it. We don't have that dog in us that like OKC has. Adding Jimmy Butler could give us that edge that I would be confident that we could make a run. Yeah, there'd be some time for some adjustments to occur. Mm-hmm. But Jimmy Butler, kind of like Kevin Durant, I feel like he's a guy you can plug into a situation. He's going to blend right in. He's going to know his role, and he's going to be that Jay Crowder aggressor that we've desperately been needing. So, time will tell. We'll continue to monitor. We have 7 weeks until the trade deadline itself, the first week of February.
Yeah.
Buckle up, Jamsters. It's going to be one hell of a ride.
Best time of the year.
Yes,
sir.
The
off season.
Yeah. Better than, fair. All right. Well, a reminder to everyone who's watching along live or watching later or listening to the podcast, subscribe, rate, review. You can follow me at Darth Void and read all my writing at brightsideofthesun.com. You can follow Matthew, and you can read his writing at brightsideofthesun.com as well. So, Matthew, take it away.
Go and love family.